their weakness power and our power powerlessness. Why did we ever believe anything? I mean, I don't expect they ever opened their mouths, but what? They didn't tell us the truth. They lied, in fact. So I can't remember where it was. So I'm going to take out my notes and see where that takes me. I don't know, my notes don't have it either. So the question is, not what should we do? Because you see, we haven't seen women feel free for 5,000 years. And feelings are what matters, because everybody operates all day long. Every single thing we do comes out of our feelings. We can rationalize it with our heads and say, why I did that, but it comes out of how we feel about ourselves, how we perceive the world, and feel about it, how we've internalized things. It's in here that the feelings come from, that the behavior comes from. Because we haven't seen women feel free for 5,000 years, we haven't seen women behave like free people for 5,000 years. So we don't know what it would look like. We haven't a clue. We can't just leap from here to there because there are no models for free women. How would we feel if we really believed that the men had no power to change anything? And in my book I go into some depth about why they can't change it, even if they wanted. And heaven knows they don't want, on the whole, to change it. But why they can't, why the people who are ruling, why the people who are in this position can't change things. Why it always has to be the people on the bottom. Frederick Douglass said it, Sojourner Truth said it, Virginia Woolf said it in 3 Guineas. It's always incumbent upon the slaves to rise and free ourselves. And in freeing ourselves, we free the oppressor. But until then, they are as in straitjackets in a little bitty jail cell. Why bother to ask them to do anything? They couldn't if they wished. We're outside the jail cell and free. And as I say, I do a long thing about that. But anyway, since they can't change it, it's because, for one thing, they have no power. Because patriarchy is at the end of its time. We're at the end of an epic. And the evidence of that is not just that I wish it were true, although I think that helps a lot. And I think we should just go along assuming that it's true and stop projecting it as strong and mighty out there and keep giving it all its energy, because all patriarchy is a massive vampire, just like that, out of women's power all day long, out of our rich resources all day long. That's what it's existing on. Vampires have no life of their own. It would drop dead if we got out of its reach where it couldn't suck us dry. Anyway, that men have no power to change. Men can't change it. And the evidence that they're incredibly weak, that this system is at its end, is that there is violence everywhere. Violence is the last resort of weakness. And where we see, every time we look anywhere, we see violence exploding everywhere. It means that patriarchy is just nearly ready. It is so senile. It is hooked up. Only thing, it's got plugs into every rich woman on the planet. I mean, by rich, I mean rich in our women's stuff that we got no words for. We got these plugs. That's their life support system. It's a little old withered up senile man that really wants to die. I mean, the kindest thing we can do, is pull the plug out of our own selves. Let him die. I think a good example of what would happen if we were to pull the plug. Enough of us just pull the plug. It takes lots and lots of plugs. And if we just a critical mass of us pulled the plug, the guy would die and it would be over. And let me tell you what I think would happen. And the example of what we're up to. I think that all women on this patriarchal planet named planet Earth are battered women. And I think we are in a battering relationship with the patriarchal state. That he is our husband. And that this isn't an analogy, that it is exactly the same syndrome. And I think if we can look at and understand why one woman stays in a relationship with a battering man, and let's just say a battering man, although we know women do it to each other too, it's simpler if we don't get into that. Let's just say, because we learned it from the men, right? So let's just take it back to where we learned it. If we can understand, and we can now, because the women's movement has helped us understand why women stay in bad relationships. Intelligent women, brilliant women, courageous women. Why did they stay? Why did your mother stay? Why did you stay? Why did my mother stay? Who was so brilliant, so beautiful, so strong, such courage, such love. My father never laid a finger on her and demoralized her from morning till night for 65 years and is still at it as I speak. Why? I said to myself as I was growing up a little girl in that household and standing outside their relationship, you see, I could see that she had alternatives. I could see she didn't need to stay in there. She didn't need to take that. I could see all the things she might do. My mother was an educated woman. Even if she hadn't been, there would have been alternatives. But I thought she could see those alternatives. And so I was full of rage that she kept taking this when she didn't have to. I was so puzzled. I was so confused. Why? Why this woman whom I loved passionately, who was me? Why was she doing this? Now, of course, I understand that battered women, one of the characteristics of that syndrome is that battered women don't see the alternatives. She didn't see those alternatives. She didn't know she really had them. She might have seen them with her head because she was smart, but she didn't feel the possibility of an alternative. She didn't feel free to do that. She hadn't done an internal revolution. She didn't know there was such a thing as an internal revolution. Well, this woman, let's take one battered woman. Let's name her Helen, because I know a battered woman named Helen. I'm going to tell you her story as I do this. In a marriage with Fred, who had been a smart woman and an educated woman. Battered, 13 years. And one day, and thinking that she had to deal with this guy. She had to try to get him to be a little kinder. She had to get him to counseling. She had to change this guy. She had to change him. That was her only alternative, to change him. And so she was doing everything she could. And because, you see, she believed all the programming. She believed, and he was just repeating the old, ancient programming to her. You're stupid, you're incompetent, you need me. I mean, you couldn't do it without me. You are so dumb, you're so disgusting. I mean, you're sexually uninteresting. I mean, you're lucky I even stay with you. No other man would have. You may think that I'm bad, that my laws, any man out there would treat you worse than this. I mean, you deserve worse than this. I'm really being kind. And, you know, if you even think of leaving, I'll kill you, and so on. That was her conditioning. This is our conditioning. Every single thing I said applies to the patriarchal state as well. Well, one day, Helen is in the emergency ward again. And the doctor, as he sets her shoulder, and as another doctor tries to put her eye back in its socket, and she's being treated for lacerations and bruises. The doctor, who's seen her often in that room, says, Helen, you know, I think that the next time I see you, you will just be passing through here on your way to the morgue. Now, why battered women change? It's different with every battered woman. I'm just telling you Helen's story because there are similarities in what, not maybe the story, but in what begins to happen inside. Helen said, I suddenly realized that though he had said he would kill me if I left, that the truth was he would kill me if I didn't leave, that I was going to die if I didn't get out of there, that it was just upside down and backwards, surprise, surprise. And once I'd begun that program, deprogramming, I began not to believe anything he'd said. I began not to believe that it wasn't possible. But the most important thing is I began to care about my own life. When he said, you're going to be dead next time, I suddenly realized how much I wanted to be alive and how important it was for me to be alive and how important my life was. And I began to change how I felt about myself in that relationship. And when we change how we feel about ourselves in our relationships, everything outside us has to change to accommodate it. When we stop enabling men to do evil, they can no longer do it. Well, Helen began to move out of that relationship in her mind, began to see or to believe in the other alternatives. Began to believe that this wasn't the only possible way, that maybe she really could do it herself. And as she began to think those things, then other possibilities began to present themselves. Other women began to come into her life because she'd opened up to the possibility that there was something else out there One day, Helen having done an internal revolution, you couldn't have told Helen back there before she had that experience in the hospital what to do. The question wasn't what to do. The question was, how shall I feel about myself? How do I want to feel in the new world? How shall I change my feelings so that my behavior then is a behavior of a free person? That I don't have to figure out everything to do. That if I feel free, if I feel self-respecting, if I feel like an honorable person, I can no more go to the polls to vote than fly to the moon. I don't have to decide not to vote. I can't do it. If I love myself, if I have integrity, I can't do it. I don't have to make the decision. If I care about my own life, I can't stay somewhere where somebody's trying to kill me. I can't vote for the lesser of two evils. I can't vote for evil anymore and still be a whole person, an evil of any kind. I can't participate in anything that doesn't reflect my freedom, my integrity, my honor, my respect for myself. And so she does this internal revolution. And one day, she leaves the marriage and she divorces Fred. Now, what happens to that marriage that Fred and Helen had over here? That oppressive, tyrannical regime of Fred's, where he ruled her every movement, where he tyrannized her, terrorized her, and every once in a while, to bond her to him, was very kind and sweet to her, allowed her, let her do this, let her do that, and then made her think that she really could change him, wedded him to her, her to him, him to her. Because every once in a while he would be kind. This is the Stockholm Syndrome. Remember, that happens to hostages, it happens to prisoners. They learn to love their guards and their jailers, because every once in a while those guards and jailers will do something really kind, and because your life depends on it, you fall in love with them. I don't mean you love them, you fall in love. And that's well documented. We are the prisoners and the hostages. And men know how to do it. Every once in a while, Fred will do something really kind, aperiodic reinforcement, whatever you know to call it. He does it, and whoom, and she's hooked in there. So here's this repressive regime which every once in a while lets up a little, seems to give a little, and then bonds her again to it. What happens to that ugly thing? What happens to that slave-holding regime? What happens to that exploitation and bludgeoning? Well, called the marriage. Well, you can look high and low. Where is Helen's marriage? When she leaves it, it no longer exists. It isn't anywhere. It isn't anything without Helen. It has to have Helen. It takes two to do a marriage. It takes two to do a battering marriage. It takes two to do war. It takes the attacker and the resistor. You have got to have somebody resisting to have war. That's why what we resist persists, is because we are participating in keeping the war going. If there wasn't anybody there, there is no attack when there is nothing to hit. There is no battering marriage when you not got a battery. Now, what are the similarities between Helen and all the rest of us? Every single thing I said is similar. This system tells us, the United States of America, government says in effect all the time to women, we may not be perfect, but we're trying very hard, and you might not like us, but we're the best there is. Any other place, boy, you want to go to Russia? You think that guy's going to treat you any better than we do? Boy, you just ought to be lucky you got us. And it never occurs to us to ask, but who said we needed a husband at all? We don't need one at all, do we? But we think we need one, and this one is the best one we can get, so we might as well stick with Fred, because he said George is going to be worse, and we know George is just practically killing Ruth, so I'll stick with George. Never asking who said we had to have one at all. One day, that's what Helen asked herself, hey, why did I think I had to have this husband? Any husband. Why did I think I had to choose and try to get the worst, the lesser of the evils? So, also, let's see, what are the other similarities, or the other same things about that relationship with Fred and our battering husband, the patriarchal state. We think that we have to change this. We think we have got to deal with this marriage. We think we've got to get those guys to change. We think that we've got to get the laws changed. We've got to work with these men. We think there is no alternative. And what I know is that the minute we think there is no alternative, we have just run up against our conditioning, our brainwashing, because there are always alternatives, always alternatives. And any time we think there isn't, we know we have just run up against that massive brainwashing. Just like that bad woman who thinks she has to keep dealing with this. Women who say to me, but we've got to deal with this system. That's what we've got. I say, can you hear that battered woman's voice? Why do we have to keep dealing with Fred? Why do we have to keep worrying about his tyrannical regime? Why do we have to worry about we can only take the car to see Mother on Saturday? I mean, why do we think we have to get him to change that? Why the hell won't we just take the car and go see Mother? Why don't we, why do we think we've got to get him to decide what we can do? Why do we think we even have to deal with him? Why do we even think we've got to stay married at all? Why? Because, you see, we really don't believe we can do it ourselves. Because we still are colonized people. Because we don't see that right in the middle of patriarchy, it dying away there. We can and must and will and are building the new world at this moment. And when I say build, I'm not just talking metaphysically. I mean really, objectively building it. That we can, in fact, and must simply make a new world. We must, as communities of women, it seems to me, figure out how we wanted the world down the road somewhere and decide to have it now. And that's part of the revolution, deciding that we deserve it now for ourselves. That we deserve to have the world just the way we want and need it right now, and that we are the only ones that can make it that way for us. And that evidence of our loving ourselves is that we will give it to ourselves. We will make it for ourselves. And that we can tell how much our revolution is going on, our revolution of loving ourselves, taking ourselves seriously, believing in ourselves, trusting our own voices, which is the revolution. We will be able to see how fast and how well that is going by, whether or not we are willing and believe in ourselves and one another enough to begin simply doing it right now the way we wanted it. If you don't want to send your kids to school, and it's immoral to send children to school. If you wanted a world in which you didn't have to send children to school to get murdered and massacred and have things happen to them that you can never undo, if you want that world, then tomorrow, stop sending your children to school. Start deciding what you're going to do instead. We have got to begin taking responsibility to make it the way we want it, the way it's necessary for this species to come home to. We've got to make a world in which women can mother our children. Because patriarchy, the most incredibly, the anguish of patriarchy to me has been that I have had 4 children and haven't been able to mother them. That I have only been able to give birth to them. And then they put me in a straitjacket. And they put fetters on my feet and stuff to gag in my mouth. And then I had to turn them over to the fathers, T, capital F, and stand and watch while they tortured them and murdered them and hurt them and hurt them and hurt them and hurt them. And I am damn near dying of that. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to have a world in which this happens to children. It's immoral. And I'm at the place where now I know that to have integrity, I have got not to participate in immorality. I've got not to say, well, we can't help it. That's the way the guys are. I've got to say, well, so who cares what they're doing? We can do it the way we want it. We can make a world and must make a world and must stop bringing children into a world if we're not willing to take the responsibility of making that world a world in which women can mother our children, can make it full of joy and laughter and happiness and good feeling about oneself, in a place where people just learn and learn and learn and can't get stopped, and not send them to school to stop them learning and growing and living joyously. We have got to make that world, and can easily. So much easier than suffering, watching those kids go off to school and then trying to put them together in 2 or 3 hours at night and can't do it and send them off again. Oh, damn. I would much rather, it doesn't seem like there's anything worth doing other than just making it. Getting together as a community and deciding, hey, what kind of world do we need for ourselves right now and our children? What do we need? What do we want? Let's figure out how we can have it now. Now there's something, because you see, if we can be joyful now, right now, we are making a world in which women are joyful, because how we do it is what we get, and patriarchy cannot sustain women's joy. If we want that world, then right now we begin to live in it, this minute, and it makes it come about. And the only thing that makes it difficult for me to do that is my Puritan upbringing, and everybody in this country, Jew, Catholic, Mormon, has a Puritan upbringing. Because what we believe is, this is American to believe, we are deeply programmed to believe that we are not making change, we're not making any difference in the world unless we're suffering. That the degree to which we're suffering is the degree to which we're changing things, right? And so, oh boy, we talk about struggle. It's a struggle, but I'm willing, you know, and we're burning out, and our immune systems are going kaput, but you know, we know that we're getting somewhere because we're really suffering a lot, aren't we? And it makes us feel really good about ourselves because we figure that's making change even though we can't see any, it's only getting worse actually around us, but we don't want to look at that because it makes us feel so good to suffer because we think we're changing things when we do. So the hard thing is to feel good about yourself when you're not suffering, and to really believe that non-suffering makes a non-suffering world, and that all we do by suffering is make a world in which women suffer. It's hard to make that leap inside. I can do it in my head, but, and then of course all outside me, people want to make that a hard leap for me to make too. They say, Sonia, obviously you don't care about women. I mean, women are out there suffering, you know. I mean, while you're sitting, feeling joyful, feeling free, feeling terrific, feeling powerful. While you're not living in patriarchy, a whole hell of a lot of women are. Fat lot you care about them. So what about that woman out there with 7 children, no money, suffering, no job? You know, what about that woman? So you're just going to stop, are you? You're just not going to care about her. And I say, you know, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I do care about her. Because the screams of the women of this world, I cannot bear them any longer. If I don't do something that finally begins to make a difference in those lives, I'm not interested in anything else. That's what I'm interested in. And everything I was doing and everything I've seen us doing has only been making it worse. And I'm not willing to make my conscience feel terrific by continuing that old way and have people approve of me for doing what they think makes change and makes them feel good, and have that woman keep on screaming only louder and louder, and more women join her, and by the year 2000 the entire poverty population of this country be women and our kids, and more women be killed every day, and more raped and more battered. I don't care if I'm a mite uncomfortable doing this thing, because what I think is, if enough of us live in a non-patriarchal world, moment by moment, and as I stand here before you, the gift you give me is that while I give this speech, I don't live in patriarchy. For a whole hour and something, I live in no patriarchy. I feel so free, so powerful, so connected to you, so able for us to do anything. I live in the world I dreamed I was going to get down the road somewhere. I live in it up here. If enough of us can do that moment by moment, live unafraid, live feeling free, feeling joyful, feeling loving of ourselves, powerful to change and make the world the way we need it, just enough of us, moment by moment, we make that a possibility on this planet. We put it into the collective unconscious. We make a new pathway in the brain. We change the morphogenetic field. We change the hologram. However you want to look at it, we make an alternative possible. We make it happen. We make it come to be real. If we can do it right now, enough of us, just the critical mass of us, not even all feminists, not even all radical feminists, just enough of us feel that way, live that way, we make it possible for women all over the world to move quickly to that place. Enough of us get through this maze, get through those feelings of doing everything in relation to men, fearful of men, worrying about men, taking care of men's diseases, not letting them grow up and do it themselves. Enough of us live in a world where we are important, where women are central because we are women. That's the transformation of planet Earth. That's what will change it, and that's what will change it overnight. I don't mean down the road somewhere. I mean overnight. I've done this in my family, and I've watched it happen overnight. And what I'm saying in recovery language is if we stop enabling the men to do evil, if enough of us stop it, the behavior changes very quickly. Let's tell you one last thing about how I stopped it in my family overnight. I came to my third teenager. I thought I would die. I thought I cannot stand another adolescence, and I had one more to go after him, and I just wanted to be lifted up by the extraterrestrials and taken off to wherever they take people and never be put back. One night, this third teenager of mine, we were up in the kitchen going at it tooth and tongue, and he went charging down to his room in fury and slammed the door, and the whole house rocked. And I was standing in the kitchen, just left there, not knowing what to do. I had no idea what to do with a teenager. I still didn't. The third time around, I hadn't learned a thing. I was still doing all the wrong things. I was still doing this. I was still... Finally, I just got so full of rage. Rage is the first evidence of health returning, of life coming back. I was so full of rage at what had happened to me as a mother on this planet, that incredible indignity and slavery of motherhood in patriarchy. I was so full of fury at that I said to myself, that kid can go to hell in a handbasket. I would be sorry because I love him, and I'm not going to put any energy in to stop loving him. But I'm not going to keep holding his heel over the abyss. Because while I'm holding his heel over the abyss, I can't get on with my life, for one thing. And for another thing, all my internal climate, my feelings of well-being, are dependent upon what he's doing hanging down over that cliff while I got a hold of his heel. I'm giving him responsibility. I'm making my feelings of security and happiness dependent on that kid's behavior. That teenager's behavior. Wow, is that dangerous or isn't that dangerous? And that's the very thing we do with patriarchy. We have made our happiness dependent upon whether or not Bork gets on the Supreme Court. We have made our feelings of safety, security, well-being dependent on the behavior of a bunch of children, not children. Children are nice. Men. Infantile is a word I want to say, and we have helped infantilize them. We're all involved in this. But we have made our happiness dependent upon their behavior. My word, we have put in their hands the power to kill us, to make us miserable every minute of our lives, to scare the wits out of us day and night, to keep us totally in their power. And that's what I noticed in my own kitchen with my own son. And I said, forget that. Boy, I am going to take back that. I'm going to now make my internal climate and my well-being, my feelings of safety and joy and success and happiness dependent on me, on my behavior. On me alone, because I'm the only person I can control in the whole world. I can't change that kid's behavior. I can't make him do anything. And while I've got his heel over the abyss, I keep trying to make him do this, make him do that, so that I won't die. I've got to be the one whose behavior decides how I feel. And if that kid self-destructs, decides to catapult down into that abyss, then I would be sorry, but it can't destroy my life because I'm going to take it back. I'm going to make it dependent on me. Now, I wasn't totally clear about this, what was going on in my mind. It wasn't in my mind. I usually do things and I look back several months later and say, oh, that's what happened there. But that's what happened there. I went down to his room, I knocked on his door. He opened it very reluctantly. We had been fighting about the door being open or closed in his room. And I don't think I said anything to him I hadn't said before. It wasn't what I said, it wasn't what I did. I'm sure I just said the same old things, such as, I'm going to take this door off its hinges, you will never have a door on this room, and so on, you know, same old threats. It wasn't that my behavior changed, it was that I had changed. I was now somebody else. And the minute he opened the door, he knew that it was all over. And it wasn't what I said, it was who I was standing there. We wear who we are all around us all the time. If some other woman walked up onto this stage and stood here by me, you could tell, I don't know if it's her aura or what it is, but you could tell how she felt about herself. We tell people if we feel powerful. We tell people if they can control us. We tell people if we're dependent on their opinion to feel good about ourselves. We tell them by the way we just stand there and be. We shout this out. Well, I did a lot of shouting to him, I guess, because overnight that kid decided not to self-destruct. He knew, not on his head, but on his viscera somewhere, he knew that it was up to him. Mama had let go of his heel. She was now back in her own life and her own body. He was going to have to take care of his. And I mean overnight. I'm not speaking metaphorically. I'm speaking actually night, like night and day. Between the night of October 16th and the morning of October 17th, that kid's life turned around in such a dramatic way, I can't describe it. What I've been trying to get to happen in that house of teenagers for about 15 years. Happened overnight. I didn't even know what I'd done. But boy, believe me, I went with it. This boy, if this does this, and it lasted. And everything changed in that house. My relations with all the kids, everything, that whole house changed. And the reason is that I changed how I felt about myself in that situation. I realized I couldn't change anybody else. I can't control anybody else, and I can't let anybody else. I can't put that responsibility for my happiness on anybody else, or I am going to have excruciating experiences one after another and be in slavery forever. And when I did that, it was all over. Everything has to change to accommodate our new way of being in the world. When enough of us do this, enough of us live in this new place, men cannot be in that old place. We have to be in that, we have to be collaborating in it for it to happen. It takes two to patriarchy. I'm leaving, I've left in effect, and while I'm up here, I'm gone. And as I say, thanks for giving me the chance to do it, because it feels so great. And so I'm thinking that at the end of the speech, to just kind of reinforce our feelings of competence to do this job, our feeling that it's our destiny to do it, we therefore can do it, that we can do it independently, that we are free to do it anytime we decide we are free, we are free. Anytime we feel free, we will then begin to act free. We don't need to worry about what to do. All we've got to do is decide how we want it to feel in a new world and start feeling that right now, and out of those feelings will come behavior we could not begin to imagine. Will begin to come the new world. We will just do it. We will just simply do it together. So the revolution is loving ourselves so passionately, so completely, looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, Sonia, I love you. I really, really love you. You are so beautiful. What did you do? Practice all night? Look at you. And so smart. And you know, I am your best friend. I will never betray you again. I will never compromise you. I will never do things that will tell you that I don't love you, like voting for some man just because he's right on some other issues but doesn't care a shoot about you. I will never, ever give you that message that you don't count, that everything else counts but not you. I will never do that again. You can count on me to be with you and be your best friend. I respect and honor you. You can count on me to do that forever. And then, when we can do that with ourselves, we don't have to worry about trusting and loving other women, not trashing them, not betraying them. The reason we do it is because we betray ourselves, because we project our self-disgust, our self-hatred upon one another. People who love themselves don't go around tearing anybody else down. They allow diversity. They don't have to talk about allowing diversity all the time. They simply do it. because they feel so secure in themselves, because they so love themselves. They got such a good friend here who will never leave them, never betray them. They are then free of all those other necessity to project and hurt out of self-hatred. That's the revolution. When we do that, it's all over for patriarchy. So to sing the song about doing that, when I talk about loving women, though, I just want to make this one thing clear before we sing the song. I'm not just talking sexually, but I want you to know that that's all right with me too, and that I do it. I'm talking about deeply honoring and respecting ourselves, so much so that we cannot participate in things that are not honorable to us, are respectful of us, that we simply cannot do them because we love ourselves so much. So let's sing a song about loving ourselves. Let's sing to the tune of "We Are Gentle, Angry People," 3 verses. First one, we are strong, strong, courageous women. Second one, we are changing the world together. That takes a little fiddling with the rhythm, but I'll sing loud. It's easy anyway, you can get it. And we're changing the world by changing ourselves. When we change us, everything has got to change. It all depends on us. And the last verse, the most revolutionary verse of any song ever sung by any group, anytime, ever. And that is, we are women loving women. Okay, everybody up and put your arms around each other. Put your arms around each other when you do this. Up, 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 up. We are strong, courageous women, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are strong, courageous women, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are changing the world together, and we are changing, changing for our lives. We are changing the world together, and we are changing, changing for our lives. We are women loving women, and we are loving, loving for our lives. We are women loving women, and we are loving, loving for our lives. Right on! Wasn't that a clever way to get a standing ovation? Oh, women are so smart.